Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. The critically acclaimed new biography, Until I Smiled at You, reveals for the first time the life of one of the most enduring musical talents in the 20th century, a young Canadian girl named Ruth Lowe, who wrote a song dynamited Frank Sinatra's career into the stratosphere in 1940, I'll Never Smile Again. July 27, 1940, her song became #1 on Billboard's first national list of best-selling records and stayed at the top for 12 weeks. Recorded by more than 150 performers around the world, and it's still being recorded today. Ruth has been called one of the architects of the American Ballad. She's the recipient of a Grammy Award. Her songs have been inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. She's about to be added to the Great American Songbook Foundation Hall of Fame as well. Now, amazingly, no one has been privy to Ruth Lowe's life story until now. Peter Jennings, the book's author, was personally selected by her family to write Until I Smiled at You. Peter, also an in-demand public speaker, talented singer of the Great American Songbook standards, broadcaster and television host, known for his ability to get his guests to open up and share never-before-heard facts. He's written 6 other books, including Shark Assault, Why Happiness Matters, and For Want of 40 Pounds, books we've discussed on This Week in America. Peter Jennings, back on the program, author of Until I Smiled at You. Peter, it is always a pleasure. Welcome back to the program.
Rick, it is always a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me on. And how's everything?
Everything is going well, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I love this story. This is an amazing story, a lady that I'm surprised we haven't heard more about, but we get a glimpse of her career in Until I Smiled at You. Let's go back and talk specifically about this song that really catapulted her career as well as Frank Sinatra's. And you mentioned the book, she was born from real heartbreak. Talk about that and how that led into writing the song, I'll Never Smile Again.
Yeah, Ruth's story is one of real resilience, Rick, because
Yes.
her father died when she was very young. And she was basically the sole breadwinner for her mother and her younger sister. And then what happened was she got picked up by the Ina Ray Hutton band known as, wait for it, the Melodiers, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
And Melodiers was an all-female band who toured around North America. And Ina Ray Hutton, in fact, if you remember the movie, Billy Wilder's great movie, Some Like It Hot, well, the Melodiers were the model for that band.
Interesting.
Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon had to disguise themselves as ladies.
Yes.
So that's where that came from. Anyway, Ruth joined that orchestra, and after a couple of years in Chicago, she met a very handsome song plugger by the name of Harold Cohen. They got married, and Ruth was a young bride looking forward to a wonderful life. And in their first year of marriage, her husband went into the hospital for what was to be a routine operation, but he died of kidney failure. And Ruth was devastated. It was almost the end of her own life. She packed up, moved back to Toronto, where she was from, moved in with her sister and her mother. And her sister, Muriel, or Mickey to friends, Mickey sadly passed away earlier this year in her 100th year.
Amazing.
But Mickey told me about the night that Ruth wrote this famous song. And basically, that afternoon, I mean, she was just torn apart with grief. She turned to Mickey and just said, Mickey, I don't think I'll ever smile again. And that night, she sat down at the piano and outpoured the song, outpoured the lyrics. And it became famous from there. As you said, it became the song that launched Frank Sinatra's career with the Pied Pipers and Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, and just put Ruth on the map. So, yes, it was born from great lack of resilience, but it was her courage and resilience to push her through.
And you can feel that as you so eloquently write in the book, Until I Smiled at You, how one girl's Heartbreak electrified Frank Sinatra's fame. She's looking out at the people in Toronto, the young couples arm in arm walking, and it just it solidified that grief, and she took it out at the piano and wrote this beautiful song that, as I say, endures today. Recorded over 150 times. At the beginning of the book, you've got a very famous contemporary musician that's recording the song. Talk about that. That's a great way to start.
Well, yeah, that kind of blew me away. David Clayton-Thomas, who, of course, is or was the lead singer of Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yes.
We go into the studio with David as he is recording his own version of I'll Never Smile Again. And that really blew me away. It was a wonderful section. They basically recreated the whole Tommy Dorsey oeuvre, if you will. And but as you say, Rick, yeah, it's still being recorded today. It's been recorded by every big singer, Billie Holiday. Everyone has had their time with the song. It's a great song.
In the introduction for the book, the foreword, which is written by Nancy Sinatra, she says, "The reason why I'll Never Smile Again has endured. It was a perfect song interpreted by the perfect singer at the perfect time." Talk about that, because we think of that era, a lot of happy songs that are out there. And now you've got this song that really touches a lot of people. We've all gone through anguish in our lives. And here's a song basically we all can relate to. Talk about that and how this was different. And that might have been one of the main reasons of its success.
Well, Rick, that's a very good point. And you know what? It did get me thinking, because I went back and I looked in 1940. What are the other songs that essentially this song competed with? I'll Never Smile Again rose above the pack. And, you know, there were all songs that the bands played to get people out on the dance floor. Pennsylvania 65000, Frenesy, and all that kind of stuff. And then, as you said, Rick, along comes this almost dirge-like song. Why did it manage to leap over the top of all the others? Well, I wasn't sure I could answer that question, so I went to a bunch of fairly renowned musical celebrities to get their take. I talked with Bernie Taupin, who's written lyrics for Sir Elton John for 50 years. I talked with Sir Tim Rice, who has written lyrics for Andrew Lloyd Webber. Alan Bergman, who's written songs did write songs for Sinatra and Barbra Streisand. And then talk to people like James Kaplan, who, of course, wrote that fabulous 2-volume Sinatra biography, Will Friedwald, others. I talked to a lot of people and basically said, how is it that this dirge-like song leapt ahead of all the other happy-go-lucky tunes? And all of them revered Ruth Lowe's talents. And basically said, Peter, when you've got a great piece of music and great lyrics, it doesn't matter. Stand back, because talent will always show through. So between that and the fact that, yeah, we were at the dawn of war back in 1940, and people were worried that perhaps, you know, their loved ones were not going to be coming back from war. So the song spoke to that too, and that's what Nancy was saying, the perfect time for a song like that.
And it still resonates today. The book we're talking about is Until I Smiled at You by Peter Jennings, the contributions by Tom Sandler, who is Ruth's son, and we'll talk about him and the association that he had with Peter before writing the book and then in writing the book. You'll find the book at Peter's website, for example, peterjennings.me. Information on all of his other books there as well. And you can buy the book at all of the usual places. Talk about this relationship with Frankie, as she called him. She helped propel his career. I had no idea probably at the time he was going to take off like he did, but she ended up writing other songs for him, including his theme song, and an interesting story you have in the book on how she went about writing the theme song.
Well, you know what, Rick? I managed to make contact with Lindy Kahn in Houston, Texas. She is the daughter of songwriter Paul Mann. And Paul Mann, along with his songwriting buddy, Stefan Weiss, they wrote the music for what became Frank Sinatra's theme song, and Ruth wrote the lyrics. And it was kind of a funny story. I won't take you all the way through it because we do recount it in the book. But essentially, one day Frank phoned up and said, hey, doll, I need you to write me a song. And Ruth said, a song, Frank, what are you looking for? And he said, well, CBS is getting me my own radio show. And you can practically see his chest expanding with pride, you know. And he said, yeah, I'm going to have my own radio show. And I need a song that can go at the beginning or end that's going to be my theme song. And Ruth said, well, okay, Frank, I'm sure I can help you. What's the mood? And he goes, the mood? I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. Well, let's see. Okay, well, how about, at the end of the evening, you usually say to your family or friends, sweet dreams. So maybe it's something about dreams and we'll use it to end the show. What do you think, Ruth? And she said, well, okay, Frank, leave that with me. Let me play around with a few ideas and I'll call you back in a few days. And he goes, well, Ruthie, that's a problem. A problem, Frankie? Yeah, I need the song tomorrow. She goes, tomorrow? No, you're kidding. He said, yeah, first show's tomorrow night and CBS just told me I need a song. So he says, anyway, you can do this. You told me you wrote I'll Never Smile Again overnight. And she says, yeah, I mean, that was different. And he says, anyway, I got to go. There's so many things to worry about. Call me tomorrow, Ruthie. Bye. And Frankie and Ruthie go off like that. When she called Paul Mann, said, do you guys have a piece of music you've been playing with? And basically, the three of them pulled an all-nighter. The next day, she called Frank Sinatra and said, okay, Frank, listen to this. She puts the phone down. She plays the piano. She sings the song. And there's no reaction. And she's going, oh, my God, he hates it. And she goes, Frankie? And he goes, I love it. Play it again. And that became his theme song, Put Your Dreams Away, which incidentally was the last song played at his funeral.
The book is such a fascinating read. Until I Smile at You. The book's available wherever books are sold. Peter Jennings, the author, back with us on This Week in America. And it's amazing. She was treated as a celebrity after this. And this was not a one-hit wonder. You mentioned the theme song, but many, many more. She wrote a lot of song, a lot of music, selections that were published, didn't she? I mean, she had a career. In a second, I want to get into nightclubs and the other things that really makes her a fascinating character.
Well, Tommy Dorsey was a smart man. I mean, they called the Dorsey band the General Motors of the dance band business. And that's because TD was a smart guy. So he recognized he had the cap of the tail here. He flew Ruth down to New York, and she essentially lived in New York for the next 3 years. And yes, she would go to the Brill Building and meet with other songwriters, Sammy Kahn and people like that. And she wrote almost 50 songs that were used for Broadway productions or Hollywood productions. And in fact, at about 1945, when she remarried, MGM wanted to make a movie about her life, and they were talking about Judy Garland starring as Ruth Lowe. But her new husband, Nat Sandler, is a pretty serious guy. He kind of poo-pooed the idea because he wanted her to kind of put that in the past and move on with her life. So she indeed became very famous. She had a newspaper column in New York. She met everybody who was anybody, Bob Hope, Milton Berle, Red Skelton. In fact, on our website, untilismileatyou.com, if you go on the website and go through to treasures, there are a ton of photographs and other things about Ruth meeting people like Bob Hope, etc. She had an amazing life.
You know, it's interesting because as Tom is going through this after his mother's passing, she saved everything, didn't she? I mean, boy, this is like going to a museum of standard pop music. I mean, this is great. I'm looking at that, and it's all it's amazing. It's worth the book for the pictures just to see what all she saved from her career.
She did. She saved everything. She was a very diligent lady. And Tommy said after she died, they found all sorts of things that he hadn't even realized were there. But she kept a copy of every contract she ever signed or anything she ever wrote, bits of music, etc. So, yeah, it's a real treasure trove, Rick. For sure.
You know, this is really an interesting book to read, and if you just approach it from here's maybe one of the earliest liberated women out there working in what has been a man's world up to this point, Talk about that aspect of it, because she knew what she was doing and she did it really well, and in many cases better than the big boys were doing it.
Well, and Rick, that's very observant of you, because you're right. I think we're living in a time of female empowerment. But if you look back, Ruth Lowe was one of the first liberated females. She was working in Tin Pan Alley, which was virtually all male dominated. And she was a good-looking lady, but she never let her appearance or her gender get in the way. She was there to write songs, and she wrote many songs on her own, and by that I mean the music and the lyrics, which put her with people like Cole Porter and Irving Berlin, because virtually all the other songwriters were duos. Rodgers and Hart, George and Ira Gershwin, Rodgers and Hammerstein, etc. So yeah, she was very talented. And the other thing I think that makes the book really a good gift right now, if you like, is that we are living in some pretty stress-filled, anxious times with the pandemic.
Yes.
And here we have a story of somebody who showed great resilience to overcome the liabilities that happened to her in her life, her father dying, her husband dying. And she indeed did overcome that and did triumph. And it's a great story of resilience. It's a happy story.
Well, and it starts, as we mentioned, she's lost everything. Her husband has died. She's back living with her mother and her sister, and that's about as low as you get at that point. And trying to restart your life, you're back living with family, trying to pull it together, and the song suddenly does that. Time is going by so quickly. Let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and we'll have more time to chat. Our guest on the program is Peter Jennings. The book is called Until I Smile at You. Again, the website, untilismileatyou.com, and peterjennings.me. We'll give you all of that later on in the program. Back more with Peter after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.